Good afternoon, folks. I don't know if you've seen that, but Charlie Cat just jumped up on the table. Thank you, Mr. E, for getting us underway. That'll bring us smartly to the first thing I've got to tell you, folk, this afternoon. And that is that I've been to the bank and on your say, I've given 250 to Berwick upon Tweed. Don't really need the receipt for that. It's going to be, because I'm doing them all through the bank, they'll all be on the statement for now, on which I intend hopefully to collect and show you at the end of every couple of months. The bank account is now sitting at a healthy £1,531.44, and that's after we've given out £750 so far this month. We still have another £250 to give away. I'm waiting on being contacted from Kelso. Okay, so we're doing great. We're helping a lot of people. Now, the stuff that I've already got, Dave and I have decided the best way to put it out, so I'm busy with a black marker scoring people's names out and also scribbling in where transactions have been through where I'd taken the money with the cash point at the Bank of Scotland in Bells Hill and paid it through that way to other people. So I'm marking all that up now, I'm photographing it all, and apparently I'm able to publish it all on YouTube as a folder. So, or a bank of photographs. So I'm working on that right now, folks. I can't say I've had a lot of time to work on it. As you know, I do have a full-time job as well as other things going on in my life. But I'm working on it and I'm hopefully going to have it already and published next Sunday. Okay, that's my target. The other thing you'll notice is there's only one David here today. And that is because the other David, although he's feeling physically much better, he did say this morning that his voice was a wee bit crumbly. So he phoned me at 12:30 today to tell me in a creaky, croaky voice that it's not working. And I can assure you, folks, it wasn't working. He should show up in the comments, I hope, and join us that way. But as I say, I'm afraid David's voice wouldn't have handled an hour's worth of exercise this afternoon. Fortunately enough, he phoned me early enough to be able to write the show as a single person show. So hopefully it works. Okay, now let's have a wee look at who's in. We've got Gary, Aki's Mad, Stephen Bankier, Mr. E, George Ewan, Wolf Pet, Jeanette, Hashberry, Stumbles, Peter, Laurie, Rosie, Stephen, June, Lorna, Mr. E, George E, Luke Indy, Jim S, Wee Bird, Chris Fisher, Neil Mack, and Gary. Wow. Hi, Laurie. There's a fair few years there. Hi, Milk. We're up at 95. We're doing no bad. That's normal. And there is the other Davy in the comments, the new. I'm afraid, as I say, his voice isn't up to it today. It just isn't. As I say, and he was generous enough to phone me early enough to allow me to write the show in a different fashion today. Okay. So, that is a Two Davies, but it's just one Davy today. So let's get into it, shall we? It's the Two Davies on the 8th of the 9th, 2025. First up this morning is Labour stooped to new low. Expense fiddler and liar appointed to replace Ian Murray as the most insignificant and irrelevant man in Scottish politics. Douglas Alexander, who was caught up in the 2009 Westminster expenses scandal, where he had to pay 12 grand back to the public purse for fiddling his expenses. Funny enough, there was no cop action taking place against Mr. Alexander. There was no forensic tent, thanks very much, Roddy. There was no forensic tent outside his front door when he actually had fiddled his expenses and had been proven to fiddle his expenses. That's interesting. But not just that. Believe it or not, in 2007, Douglas Alexander used 30 grand of public money to rebuild his house in Houston, Renfrewshire, when it went on fire and he was insured. He got 30 grand for public purse to rebuild his private residence because he wasn't insured properly. And on top of that, he stole 12 grand for the public purse and was forced to pay it back. And he stabbed his sister in the back in 2008 when she was involved in an expenses scandal. when Wendy Alexander, who was the leader of the Labour Party in the Scottish Parliament at the time, hadn't declared all of the money given to her on her campaign to get elected. So a thoroughly disreputable family and a thoroughly disreputable man is now sitting in the Scotland office. Just as well, Vice or Governor General for Scotland has no real power anyway. People just ignore him. In fact, we ignore Westminster most of the time. I think that's what irks him a lot, you know. But, I mean, his sister says she had to quit the Scottish Parliament after receiving a one-day ban from the Parliament in 2008 for failing to declare her campaign funding. So the new Governor General is a thief, a liar, and a thoroughly despicable character who would even throw his own sister under a bus. Starmer's really scraping the bottom of the barrel now. And I mean really scraping the bottom of the barrel now. And I see he was on the TV at the weekend telling us how Labour are going to surprise us all to win the Holyrood election. I'll tell you what, today there's going to have to be a fucking steward's inquiry. Because at this point in time, they're a distant second to the SNP and only just in front of Reform. But if Labour end up as the biggest party in that fucking Parliament in Edinburgh after the 2026 election, I'll expect a thorough investigation on how that happened. So I will. Right, next up, John Swinney has written to Keir Starmer to get his pledge to approve an Indie Ref if the SNP secure a majority of seats in the next Scottish Parliament after the election. And of course, Starmer refused. And Starmer said, it's just diversionary stuff. It's no important to the people of Scotland. Do you know what I mean? I'm fucking fed up of people outside Scotland and their agents within Scotland telling me what it is the Scottish people fucking want. The opinion polls tell you what we fucking want. We want a sane marine future. That's what we want. And Charlie's not happy with that either. He knows where democracy's been denied. But this is where John's going to get Keir. Because in his statement, Keir said the SNP won't get a majority at Holyrood. Well, if that's the case then, Keir, you've not got any problem with making the fucking pledge that you would issue a Section 30 order if the SNP won a majority, have you? So call his bluff, John. Say, all right, and you don't think we're going to win a majority? Here, sign the pledge. Same time, Angus Robertson, Keith Brown, he's writing to the other leaders of the cuckoos in the nest in Scotland, the Lib Dem, Labour and Tories that made up the Better Together group in the last time. He's wanting them to re-sign the pledge they signed in 2012, saying that, all right, you don't agree with independence, and that's a perfectly legitimate position to have. But sign the pledge to say that you acknowledge that it is up to the people of Scotland to decide their future. Because if you're not going to do that, then we know the game's a fucking bogey. We're going to have to do it the hard way. And that is just break free without any negotiation. Just cut the fucking cord. And that will make it more difficult in the first few years. But we'll still get by. It'll take a wee while, bit by bit, to take control of them, but we'll get by. And the other thing that lot of land there have to learn is they're in charge of everything when it comes to election and referenda, with the exception of that one issue, the issue of the constitutional question. So start taking the powers back one by fucking one, referendum by referenda, until that place down in Westminster becomes fucking irrelevant. Because the inaction and the non-use of powers that they can legitimately use, because they can ask the people of Scotland a question on absolutely anything through referenda. So get on with it. Do we want control of this tax? Do we want control of that tax? Would we like to be in control of our resources? Get the fucking referenda done. Let's start it a couple of times a year. SNP. Let's take the powers back one by one via referenda. Start asking the people of Scotland what they want, and that lot down that road will crumble. They'll haunt it over one by one. Right. So that's what the SNP's been up to this week, you know. And news that a 40th current MSP is about to stand down. Another SNP, MSP this time, an ex-frontbencher, Kevin Stewart. He's standing down for Parliament at next year's election due to ill health. Kevin was first elected to Holyrood in 2011 and has been in the cabinet twice. First under First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, where he was on the mental health brief. And then secondly, under Humza Yousaf as the Transport Minister, which, funny enough, he resigned from citing mental health. So being the Minister for Mental Health obviously hasn't helped his mental health. I can imagine it's quite a difficult job, actually. But anyway, during the summer there, Kevin Stewart suffered a series of illnesses, and he says he's no fit to fight another campaign. Because, I don't know if you know this, folks, but the candidates, they put in a lot of legwork and a lot of work during an election campaign. And, as I say, Kevin, a good MSP, he says he needs to stand down so somebody who's 100% fit, can do the legwork, can do the talking, can put 100% energy in it to hold his Aberdeen central seat. So we wish Kevin all the best. Thanks for your years of service. And the same goes for the rest of them. Have decided to throw the towel on no matter what party they're in. Whether they be Cuckoos in the Nest, or whether it be Green, or whether it be SNP. If you're standing down, thanks for your service. And I mean that. Even if some of you were working against the interest of the Scottish people some of the times. I'm sure he's all entered that Parliament with good intentions. And so, for those who are not standing again, thanks for your service. Nathan, I'm well aware of the latest polling. I really am well aware. The folks will probably notice that every time an SNP, MSP stalling down, or for whatever issue, we'll bring you the news here because, well, we're party members. You know, right. New section, new parliamentary term, and that is what business is being conducted in Parliament this week. Okay, now I intend to do this every Monday. So what is going on in the Scottish Parliament this week, we'll put it up. Okay, on Monday, there are no meetings. Oh, hold on, wrong bloody page. On Tuesday, starting at 2 p.m, time for reflection with Margaret Henderson, poet, storyteller. And then it moves on to Parliamentary Bureau motions, topical questions, if selected to ask a question, that is. A range of ministers will be there to answer the questions. Ministerial statement on actions to support, improve relationships and behaviour in schools. And then there'll be the Scottish Government debates, 20 years of ScotRail, providing a strong platform for the future. Then there'll be committee announcements, business motions, Parliamentary Bureau motions, and then decision time, which is when the motions are voted on, all right. And then afterwards, the members' business, and Liz Smith is celebrating residential outdoor education for young people in Scotland. So that's what's happening tomorrow. On Wednesday, with time for reflection again, and then parliamentary motions, topical questions again, Aye. Topical questions again. Scottish Government debate. Sorry, it hadn't changed. Beg your pardon. Knew it's changed to Wednesday. We've got Parliamentary Bureau motions, portfolio questions, Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party debate in the economy, Scottish Services and Unionist Party debate, finances and local government, business motions, Parliamentary Bureau motions, approval of SSIS if required. And then we'll have the votes at 5:10, and then there's members' business again. And this time it will be Stuart McMillan, improving bladder cancer diagnosis in Scotland. So that's the full programme for Wednesday. Now we'll move on to Thursday and get a chance to change because it seems a bit slow. As you can see, it's loading at the moment. Boy, that is slow. Oh, we seem to have a problem. Here we go. Thursday, 11:40, Parliamentary Bureau motions. 11:40 also, general questions. 12 o'clock, we'll have First Minister's questions. Then we'll have members' business. 2:30, Parliamentary Bureau motions. Portfolio questions, social justice and housing. Ministerial statement, GFG business operations in Scotland, whatever GFG is. Then there'll be Scottish Government debate supporting Scottish exports in response to global uncertainties, Trump the spanner. Then we've got business motions, Parliamentary Bureau motions, and then the votes at 5 o'clock. There are no meetings on Monday or Friday, so that's all the business that there is in the Scottish Parliament this week. So each week on a Monday, we'll have a look at what business has been put before the Parliament during the week, and that way you can cherry pick anything you want to tune in. Now, you can go to the Scottish Government website and find out what's going through the Parliament. There's also a separate section which will tell you what's going on in the committees, which is very important because that's where most of the real legwork is done, in the committee section. And there's also a programme for government and all that there. And archives of previous works and bills passed by the Scottish Parliament. So, folks, one of the great things about living in a democracy is we get to participate in the democracy. And a way to do that is to pay attention to what's going on in the Parliament. So each Monday, we'll have a look at what the Parliament is debating that week. So as we can see, there's a couple of big debates coming up. The Tories on the economy, that should be quite funny. I might watch that one myself. And then the Tories on local government finance. That should be quite funny too. So I might enjoy that. But get involved in your Parliament. Get involved in the public consultations. Participate in the democracy. It's important. It's very important because, in a way, through participation in what the Parliament is doing, we get to mould the direction that the Parliament travels in. So always participate in the public consultations and that if they are of interest to you. If no, don't bombard the Parliament with nonsense. Okay. But as I say, it is important that we're aware of what's going on in that Parliament, and I intend to bring it up each Monday as part of this programme. We'll see what David's going to say. It might not happen. After all, it's a partnership. Right, let's move on. The BBC is asking on its website if independence will be front and centre in the Scottish general election next year in May. And of course, it answers its own question by stating that it will be. That, of course, then goes into UK propaganda, calling it divestment politics and all that shit. So I say, I'm fed up with other people telling us what it is we want. I mean, Starmer's up here last week telling us what it was we want. He's no fucking listening to what people are saying. He's telling us what we want. Anyway, of course, independence will be front and centre in this election and all elections going forward. That's already been made clear by the SNP. And it's beginning to look like that's the Greens policy going forward as well. So, it'll be front and centre. It's going to be. Now, in that BBC article on their website, they are talking about, the result of the last time and what's more important to the Scottish people. The one thing they seem to be forgetting is that this is number 3 and number 4 on the Scottish people's agenda. And as Mary and Mary, the people who were involved in the last referendum, shuffle off this mortal fucking coil, it gives Westminster a bigger problem, because those coming through are still polling in the mid-70s on wanting independence. There's only about 25 to 28% of the young population that don't want to take control of their own destiny. So, yes, this will be front and centre, and it would appear the establishment's shiting themselves because of it. This isn't going away. The call is only going to get stronger as the younger people come through. And they know that. But what they're trying to do with the media, they're trying to convince us that we're bored with it. We're bored with the constitutional question. They're trying to tell us there's more important things. Is there? Is there, Mr. Starmer? You want to explain to my people, Mr. Starmer, and the people who live here by choice, you want to explain to us how it is that we managed to have the biggest reserves of energy and aggregates in Europe, and yet we managed to get fucking poorer. You want to explain that to the people, Mr. Starmer? Independence is inexplicably linked with all these things. We don't have control over resources, so we're poorer. £100 billion a year poorer, actually, but that's beside the fucking point. We're poorer. We will gain control of those resources with independence, so that will be another 100 billion quid in the pot. We won't be poorer. We will be 100 billion a year richer. That's their own numbers, by the way. That's no my numbers. That's their numbers, no mine. We have to take control in order to stop being the poorest nation in Northern Europe, or one of the poorest nations in Northern Europe. So, yes, BBC, you can try and convince us that the cost of living crisis is more important. Well, we don't have control of our economy, so we cannot sort this shit out. We can't make the electricity companies give us electricity at the cheapest price in Europe, which would have happened if we went to regional pricing. But of course, that was kiboshed by the bastards next door. So we had no control over that. So instead of having the cheapest electricity in Europe, we've got the most expensive electricity in the world. Yet we're generating all the fucking electricity. Unreal. Highest energy costs right across the board. But we don't have control of anything that could allow us to change that. The only way to allow us to change that is, as John Swinney keeps telling us, need control of this, need control of that for independence. Well, John, you know what? I think you could get control of these things without independence, although it would be ultimately the lead to independence, because as we demand through referenda control of each item on a big, long list for one referenda after another, they're going to get pissed off with us doing that road. And they're going to say, oh, just get the fuck. So start your referenda run, John. Let's start with complete control of VAT. Complete control of business taxes. Complete control of alcohol duty. Let's do it one at a fucking time. Right. So, no matter what the press is telling us, folks, this isn't going away. Polling tells us it's not going away. And polling also tells us that as more of us at our age shuffle off and the younger folk are coming through, they want it even stronger than us. And what was really inspiring about that march at the weekend, for the first time in a long time, there was a lot more young people on it. And that was probably why it was double the size of the Glasgow march. because the young were starting to turn out. We need the young to turn out, and there are hundreds of thousands on the streets. Hundreds of thousands. So we do. But as I say, devolution with soldiers are means of putting an end to the lust for independence, but that's not what's happened. It's become the driver of the lust for independence. But there is more we can do, folks. We can get that Parliament along there to start holding referenda on fucking everything. Absolutely everything. The minute they say no, when we have a parliamentary majority along that road after the next Holyrood election, then a series of referenda should be put in place asking the people of Scotland what they would like to take control of as a devolved nation. And as we vote on each of them, that puts pressure on Westminster to go along with it. Because it'll be the will of the people of Scotland as declared in referenda after referenda after referenda after referenda after referenda after referenda after referenda. You're right, devolution's no safe now. No way for eyes on the horizon. He said he would shut the Senate and the Scottish Parliament down. He doesn't have any ability to shut Stormont down. That's a different matter. But the Reform conference, it was quite funny. Right. I guess we better move on to the cabinet reshuffle down that road, shall we? So, what's the new lineup? Right, Starmer's still top doggy. Temporarily at least, the Deputy Prime Minister is genocide enabler, David Lammy. The shocker of them all, Rachel for Accounts, is still the Chancellor. Right, Darren Jones becomes the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. Yvette Cooper takes over for David Lammy as Foreign Secretary. Shabana Mahmood takes over for Yvette Cooper as Home Secretary. Yvette Cooper becomes Foreign Secretary. John Healey, Defence Secretary. Steve Reid becomes the Housing Minister. That was Rayner, of course. She was the Housing Minister as well. Bridget Foxton is still in charge of education down that road. Ed Miliband is still in charge of energy. Pat McFadden, this is a fucking bad one, folks. Pat McFadden is now Minister for the Department of Work and Pensions. That does not bode well for people on benefits. In fact, that's going to be a fucking disaster for people on benefits. Pete Kyle gets a business brief. Liz Kendall gets a science, innovation and technology brief. Heidi Alexander gets a transport brief. Emma Reynolds, environment brief. Lisa Nandy, cultural secretary. Hilary Benn, Secretary for State for Northern Ireland. Douglas Alexander, Secretary of State for Scotland. Joe Stevens, Secretary for State for Wales. Baroness Smith of Basildon, Leader of the House of Lords. Alan Campbell, Leader of the Commons. Jonathan Reynolds, Chief Whip. Richard Heimer, Attorney General. Baroness Chapman, Foreign Office Minister. James Murray, Chief Secretary to the Treasury. And Anna Turley, Minister without portfolio, also known as the substitute. Right. There was a bunch of minor ministers as well, what they call undersecretaries appointed as well, 8 of which are from the cohort of Scottish Labour MPs. And of course, Ian Murray, he get demoted. So that's the lineup down that road. The big one, the frightening one for people of pension age and disability and of those who are unemployed would be Pat McFadden's move to the Department of Work and Pensions. Because he makes Theresa Coffey look like a fucking kitten. He's a political axeman. Whereas Coffey might have been thick and liked a cigar and some champagne, this one prefers the long knives. Oh dear. Right. And just to kick off things in the direction that we don't think things should be going in here in Scotland, the new Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood. Right, Charlie, keep your noise down. Keep your noise down, wee fella. I'll try to work. Thanks very much, Jags man. Anyway, Shabana Mahmood at Five Eyes meeting the day says she's thinking about cutting off any route to the UK from countries that don't have a take them back policy agreement with the UK. Now, if you don't know what Five Eyes are, it's America, Canada, United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand. And it's a defence and it's a trade cooperation group. But it's no good, folks. This isn't good. Their own information tells us that we need 1 million people a year coming through the door. 500,000 to replace those who leave each year. And another 500,000 to top up specific workforces and the general workforce. And yet here we have them talking about shutting the doors. This is the state taking a grip. It's isolationism. It's cutting us off. When they're talking about closing the borders, it'll get to the point where they'll be talking about not letting people out either. Because they've got to realise that if people keep going at a rate of 500,000 a year and not letting anybody in, then a disaster is looming. So it would appear that Westminster is off in the direction that Scotland cannot afford to be in. We have a desperate need for people in our economy. Our economy needs lots and lots of people because it's growing. It's a functioning multi-industry and multi-skills economy. We need a lot of people. And they're going in the other direction down that road. They're closing the fucking door. And that tells me the state is scared. It's not scared of what's going on outside. It's scared of what's going on inside. And that means it needs to cover up its actions against what's happening inside. At the weekend there, the state lifted 400 more people for supporting Palestine action. 400 more people were arrested at a protest in London this weekend. The clampdown on liberties down that road, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, the right to protest, it's all disappearing. It's being clamped down on. And the reason for shutting the borders isn't so that they can stop people coming in. It's so that people from the outside can't see what they're doing in the fucking inside. If people are that fucking stupid, they can't see what's happening in front of their faces. Their civil liberties are being ripped away one by one. And I keep hearing headbangers down that road shouting about doing away with the Human Rights Act. Can people not fucking see what's happening in front of their faces? And we all got fucked over yesterday and all, didn't we? We all got our wee national alert system. The back door's just been kicked in on your phone, folks. Big Brother isn't watching. We actually let them fucking in. You've got Alexa sitting in the corner of every living room, listening to what every fucker's saying and recording every conversation. This isn't me making stuff up. This is what's happening. For example, anybody notice when they're talking to their partner about maybe needing a new cooker, a dishwasher, a car? Ever noticed how your social media feed then becomes flooded with adverts for these things? That's not a rabbit hole, that's a fact. And yesterday, the citizens of the UK, the citizens of Scotland, the subjects in England and Wales, and the citizens of Northern Ireland just get the back door of their phones kicked in. But as I say, they're shutting the door, folks, and it's not so that people from the outside can't come in. It's so that people from the outside can't see what's being done within. And the state is becoming more authoritarian as the days pass. It's happening in front of our faces, and we are being preconditioned by the media to take it. I'm working, Charlie Cat. I'm working. So the new Home Secretary has gone in the wrong direction already. You can't get... Come on, sit down. I'm trying to work here, Charlie Cat. Okay. As I say, people can't see what's going on. Right now, down that road, of course, the trade unions. Oh, he's heard his mummy's away. We follow her, thank God. Right, down that road, the trade unions are gone radio rental about the sacking of, or the resignation of Angela Rayner, and the sacking of, where's his name? Now, what they're upset about, folks, is the Workers' Rights Bill. It looks as if they're getting rid of Rayner and the sacking of Justin Madders, who were going to be carrying this piece of legislation through Westminster. The trade unions think that Starmer's either going to water it down or he's going to shelve the new Workers' Rights Bill. Now, obviously business don't like this bill. Labour are now more dependent on donations from big business and from individual contributors and what they are, what they get for the trade unions now. And Starmer is probably going to either slow this thing down or water it down if it hits the floor of the House at all now. Sharon Graham and Christina McKern, Unison and Unites, leaders to the biggest trade unions in the UK, they don't think that this bill is going to make it through the Parliament now. And they're threatening to withdraw support for the Labour Party unless this bill makes progress. But as I say, the Labour Party is now built on the same model as the Tory Party, so they don't need the trade unions. And as we've seen with West Streeting, they're willing to go to war with the trade unions. So it would appear that this flagship Workers' Rights Bill, which is the last thing of any good that they promised today, might well be going by the wayside as well. We'll have to wait and see. If it does go forward, though, the trade unions think it'll be watered down to suit big business, because the Labour funding model is now more reliant on big business than what it is on the trade unions. So, not bloody good. Don't get me wrong, I don't think the bill was that bloody good either. That's beside the point. There's no a competent operator in that fucking Parliament, in government, or in opposition in the Tory party, so you don't expect good legislation to be written. the trade unions think that Rayner was set up to get shot here. And then Justin Madden, who was also championing this bill, being sacked. And the reshuffle, they think this bill's going to go by the wayside. Aye. It should be funded for the public purse. It shouldn't be allowed to raise funds other than from the public purse. Thanks, Class Action, you're a star. You're all stars. Aye, like chaos. Right. Well, I have to say it, folks, as we move on, the level of stupidity, of knuckle-dragging, bleeding knuckle stupidity that has just hit Westminster is on a scale that none of us have ever seen before. Labour's new policy for growing the economy is to build up the vast military-industrial complex of the UK. As a business strategy, it doesn't work. And Stephen Kelly sent me a link. I wonder if I've still got it up. Yeah, I haven't actually. Anyway, Stephen Kelly sent me a link to a Labour MP, see if I can find it, who was boasting where is it? Oh, that's no Stephen Kelly, that's there. Well, that couldn't have been Stephen. Anyway, so can't find it. Somebody sent me a link, I think it's Paul Fulton, who's just been made an Undersecretary to the Ministry of Defence, and he was talking about how they're going to use the vast military-industrial complex to bolster and create growth in the economy. Folks, this is a fucking dead duck idea. It's also a dead people idea, because as I wrote on this Fulton character's boastful post, I says, in order for that as an industrial strategy to work, the world needs to be on fire constantly, because you have to sell the fucking things. And then I also asked this MP how he felt about supplying arms to a genocidal despot regime. And well, actually, folks, how they feel about it is they're quite comfortable with it, because they're about to build up the vast military industrial structures and capacities in the UK in the hope of bolstering the economy. That means there's going to be war constantly somewhere. And then once you've built your own arsenal up, everything comes to a fucking halt. The jobs get back down to minimum again, unless there's a fire somewhere in the world. So I've asked him how many people he intends to kill with this strategy. And when is it they intend to take us into a war? Because that's what this is for, folks. Once you build it, you need to use it. Otherwise, it's sitting about being fucking dangerous to yourselves. So, as I say, the level of stupidity and desperateness to try and rescue this failing, collapsing economy and state has reached a level so low that we're seeing the gates shut, we're seeing the lights put out so nobody can see what's going on within, and we're gearing up for a war because they've got nothing left. So now they're going to have to destroy everything to build back. And unfortunately, they're going to kill a lot of fucking people in the process. That has got beyond stupid. So here we have a state which is failing, It's shutting the doors so that people can't see what's going on within. It's building up a military arsenal to fuel fire around the world. That can only have one outcome, folks. And as an old soldier, I know. And that ain't fucking pretty. You know, you asked me this 5 years ago and I laughed it off, but there's a war coming. There's a war coming. If you'd asked me that 5 years ago, I'd have thought you were mad if you suggested that there was going to be the stupidity and economic strategy of building arms to bolster a failing economy. I'd have fucking laughed at you. But I'm watching it happen. I'm watching it happen rapidly. Under a right-wing dictator posing as a Labour politician. I am watching people for peaceful protest being lifted in the hundreds, week in, week out. I am watching the new Home Secretary. We have plans to shut the fucking doors so nobody can see what's going on inside. There's a rising level of civil unrest, and there's a rising level of poverty, and there's a rising level of authoritarian control coming down the fucking line in England. Supplying people who are angry with jobs making weapons isn't it a fucking great idea, to be honest with you? Well, I mean, I really am. I have never seen such a... You know what's coming. You know what's coming. The doors are being shut. The military-industrial complex is being built up. We all know where that's heading. We all know where this is heading, folks. And we have to put a fucking stop to it. And we have to put a stop to it really, really, really quickly. Because it's our children and grandchildren we're fucking talking about here who are going to get popped off to these wars. To be slaughtered in the big mincer created by this vast military complex which Starmer intends to build up. Trust me, there's only one way this is going to end. And it's fucking badly. It has to be stopped, and it has to be stopped now. I'm afraid we ain't going to be able to save the people next door. We can't always be their fucking fire engine to put the fires out. Sorry, England, you're going to have to deal with this one on your own. And what we need to do is see their 10 billion on the Clyde to build ships. Tell them to get fucked, take them elsewhere. See their fucking nuclear weapons on the Clyde. Tell them to get fucked, take them elsewhere. We want no part of this stupidity. We already have a diverse and thriving economy. Banking, human sciences, education, tourism, food, drink. We've got a thriving, diverse economy. We don't need to get into an arms race. And we all know where arms races end. And there's a war coming. They want rid of a lot of people. And the best way to get rid of a lot of people, two tribes go to war. Okay. Right, talking about war. As we come towards the end of the programme, let's have a look and see what's going on in Israel and in Ukraine. Palestinian prisoners not being given adequate food, Israel's top court says. So even Israel's top court is telling us, I may as well share it with you. It's telling us that the Israeli state are starving Palestinian prisoners. Here it's there. Greta Thunberg, Gaza flotilla arrives in Tunisia. Will it make it across, or will the Israelis bomb it out of the water this time? Apparently, thousands thronged Jerusalem to press Netanyahu to make hostage release deals. The people of Israel are tired of this war now. Recognition of Palestine state as disaster, US ambassador to Israel says. Might be a disaster for fucking Israel, it's no disaster for people of Palestine. It can only bolster their cause. Apparently, Hamas has released some videos of some surviving hostages. And if that's one of them, he's looking quite healthy, thanks very much, in the middle of a famine. They must be looking after him quite well. And Israel destroys dozens of buildings in Gaza City as new offensive intensifies. So they're bombing the rubble to smithereens. And Israeli dismisses as spin after Hamas says it's ready for comprehensive Gaza deal. So they don't want fucking peace. Simple as that. They don't want peace. And after a terrorist attack in Israel this morning, Netanyahu's set to step up in the West Bank. But that'll suit Starmer and his mob, because they like to sell fucking weapons that kill children in their fucking thousands. But we are where we are. We need to sort it. We need to sort this. They are driving us towards a war that we don't want to get involved in. I can assure you of that. So that's what's going on in Israel and Gaza. As I say, but the offensive in the West Bank is just about to start, folks. And that terrorist attack this morning in Jerusalem, I wouldn't be surprised if it was the Israelis who did it themselves, because it's been clear all along that Gaza and the West Bank is to be wiped off the face of the map to complete the Greater Israel project, as well as parts of Syria being stolen and others round about them. At this point in time, Jordan must be shaking in its boots. Right, let's have a look and see what's going on in Ukraine, shall we? Oh, you're going to love this nonsense. Let's share it. Trump threatens tougher sanctions after Russia's heaviest strike on Ukraine. Never heard so much pushing all your life, have you? Nope. Trump is Putin's fanboy. Zelensky condemns ruthless attack after Russians hit main government building. Of course they hit the main government building in Kyiv. If I'm trying to take down a regime and overrun its land, I'm going to wipe its parliament out. Fuck's sake. Inflatable tanks and flat-pack guns inside Ukraine's decoy war. There you go. The Russians are wasting ammunition shooting balloons. Putin says Russia will achieve all aims militarily if Ukraine does not agree deal. Didn't know it was one on the table. Apparently, it's 4,000 miles from Ukraine, but even this Asian city is part of Russia's war, so it must be Korea, because they've been sending people there, haven't they, to get battle hardened. So no progress is the main story here when it comes to Ukraine. Russia's up in the game, and Ukraine just isn't. It's not going to be a good outcome. Eventually Putin will get what he wants, and the rump of Ukraine will just need to put up with it. The bad thing for Putin is, when you steal a person's land and you leave them on the land once you've stole it, you're going to have a hell of a time living with them, because they'll want their land back. So we could be seeing another Gaza type situation pop up in the occupied territories of Ukraine. Mental stuff. Why, Yules? You're asking what this is? Well, firstly, welcome. And what it is, it's a wee guy sitting in a house in North Lanarkshire giving his opinion on world affairs and on political affairs. On drone warfare. Don't know much about drone warfare. But that's the situation. Russia's got the upper hand. And Trump, mayor, sanctions my arse. Trump's a Putin toy. Trump's a Putin plant. Trump's a Putin fanboy. Anyway, so gross stupidity at Westminster, nothing new there. We still need to get the fuck out of here. And there's a war coming because you don't shut the doors, stamp down on people's civil liberties, put the lights out and start building weapons without a fucking reason. But that's just one man's opinion. That's just my opinion. But what we're seeing down that road with the shutting of the borders, that's not to stop people coming in. That's to stop people from the outside seeing what's going to happen within. We're seeing the tub thumpers down that road for doing away with the Human Rights Act. We are actually watching and have slowly watched with the Security Acts and the Police Crimes Courts and Sentencing Act down that road. People's civil liberties being ripped away. The state's not doing that without a reason, folks. The state is not doing that without a reason. Believe me, it's no. And I'll tell you what, this started under Rishi Sunak, or just before. And it's got even worse under Starmer. We were expecting him to come in and turn out all these bills which stamp down on civil liberties. But he hasn't done that. He's doubled down on them. Thank fuck a lot of their laws don't apply in our land. As far as I'm concerned, none of them should apply in our land. Right, folks, thanks very much for your donations today. Thanks very much. To see if you think kind donations a day. For anybody that's new who doesn't know, any money we make for this channel, it all goes to food banks. We don't keep a penny. And although the bank statement, I've read out the number what we've got in the bank now, sounds quite healthy, actually we give anything that's left in the month of December, January, to 3 food banks in Scotland. So when we build up over the year as we're giving out the £750 a month to food banks, anything that's left at the end of the year, we clear the account out, it becomes empty. We give every single penny to the baby banks. All right. So, thanks very much for your generosity, folks. We always say it's a community here that does it. It's not David and I. We just present a show, giving our opinions on politics, world affairs, so on and so forth. All right. You guys look after each other. As you know, the high-vis vest is about to go on, and Davey's away, about to go to the transport yard to go to work. So, look after yourselves. I'll be back in the morning, 10:30, to do another newspaper headline review. We'll see what nonsense is in the press. So, I hope to see a lot of you there. And I say thanks, folks. It's a pleasure to put the programme on for this community. And it's a pleasure to help people in Scotland via this community. All right. Thanks for the moderators for moderating. If you could hit the like button on the way out the door, please, folks, because it does help the algorithm. Share this if you want to. That's up to yourselves. I don't. No fuss either way. And have a nice day. See you in the morning, 10:30. Don't be late or you're on the naughty step. Eyes on the prize, and the prize this time is